Production funding for After Abbey on WPSU comes from Caparella Furniture, serving the area with furniture, flooring, and home decorating ideas for more than 60 years, with locations in Bellefonte and Lewistown. Information at caparella.com. And from Confers Jewelers on the Diamond in Victorian Bellefonte, a family and staff dedicated to bringing a taste of luxury and beauty to yours. And from viewers like you, thank you.
Good evening and welcome to After Abbey, the live post-Downton Abbey interactive talk show where we invite you to discuss all things Downton with us. Hi, I'm Whitney Sheridan, along with my fellow producers and Downton fans, Jessica Peters and Lindsay Whistle. Tonight, we'll be looking forward to your phone calls, your emails, tweets, and Facebook posts. We've also got a special guest joining us in a little bit to talk about the fashion of Downton Abbey. We'll be opening the phone lines in a moment, but you can always email afterabby@wpsu.org or tweet a question to us at AfterAbbey to join the conversation. We welcome your correspondence. Right now, we've got a lot going on, and in honor of fashion, the discussion that we're talking about this week, we want you to cast your vote in our online poll. Right, Jessica?
That's right. So right now we have a poll on our Facebook page where you can go on and you can vote for who had the better dress, because we had two weddings, two dresses that were quite different. So do you like Lady Mary's dress? Do you like Lady Edith's dress, which I said those backwards? Or a third choice, the Dowager. Of course, she always wins. We love those hats.
That. We don't have a picture of that, but we
don't have that.
know what the Dowager looks like.
That's right. So you can go onto our Facebook page. You can vote in that poll this evening, and we'd love to hear from you and why you like that particular dress.
That's right. So that's just to kickstart our conversation on fashion. It's all about fashion tonight here on After Abbey. But first, a lot's happened in tonight's episode. And let's get started with a discussion about Anna and Bates. What's going on with that, Jessica?
Oh my gosh. So we have Bates still in prison, but he's not getting his letters. Anna's not getting her letters. And that moment where she has that conversation with Mrs. Hughes, where she felt, you could just tell she felt so vulnerable, and she started to cry because she wasn't getting Bates' letters, and she was so concerned that Bates was telling her to move on. But we had the resolution. It was just that mean old cellmate of his and that terrible prison guard hiding the letters, but now he's back in favor and they're getting their letters again. That was such a great moment at the end.
Oh, that beautiful moment where he's so relieved because she hasn't given up on him. And then you've got a little bit of, I think, potential conflict down the way. You've got Matthew, who's been reviewing those books, and some of the numbers aren't adding up, and he had the uncomfortable conversation with Robert, who doesn't want to hear it, and then he even went to the Dowager. So I'm curious to see how they're going to sort those messy books out.
I mean, you can kind of see how the estate got into trouble by how it's being managed. I mean, and you say, oh, yeah, exactly. So
that's right. And we also heard a little bit about a potential for a nursery or not a nursery with Mary and Matthew. So
there's something at play there.
Something at play there, indeed.
Yeah, we're not getting the whole story.
No,
and
not
Jessica,
quite.
what about with Ethel?
Oh, Ethel. That was so sad. I mean, that just, it makes you get really teary. I mean, she wanted to do the best for her son. It was so sad, though, to see her go away. And you know what I didn't really appreciate? I didn't really appreciate Mrs. Crawley after Charlie had left. And she's like, you could tell she didn't approve, and it's like, just be supportive of this poor woman in her hour of need. Just keep your opinion to yourself for once.
So. And she grew so much because she chickened out the first time, and a few years later she changed her tune.
That's right. That's something we've seen with a lot of the characters this season, is a lot of growth with these characters.
Yeah. Speaking of growth, we have the poor Lady Edith, who I love when that scene where she can't have her breakfast in bed, and just she's so resigned to her fate as the poor matronly sister who's probably going to be a spinster. But then she finally gets a moment in the sun when they publish her letter on women's rights. I mean, I think everybody was just like, oh, thank gosh, one for Edith, you know, finally.
And the look on her face was, she was so excited.
She was
trying to hide it.
My letter? Oh, yeah, so finally Edith, something at least is coming together for Edith. Let's knock on wood that they won't cancel her letters.
And one we didn't get to last week at all that we've been watching a lot is Branson and Sybil.
Yeah, you know, it's no secret that I am a fan of Mr. Tom Branson, but that he left his pregnant wife in this place where she's pregnant. She is going to this foreign country. It's a place of turmoil and unrest, and why did you leave her?
Not okay.
No. So, but, you know, it's good to see that they're reunited, and Tom's going to suck it up and stay at Downton for the sake of his child, for, you know, that the child won't be born in Ireland.
And we also saw a lot of his, you know, protesting against, you know, it was an aristocrat's house who was burned, but he did say that he was against the personal violence, which was something that was very nice to see. So,
but I mean, it's like the Crawleys. I mean, what does that say? That there's still that much tension between his lifestyle and their lifestyle.
Yeah. But didn't you love the Dowager saying, oh, it was a terrible house, and oh, it was so ugly? And it's like, oh, leave it to the Dowager.
Give us a little perspective.
That's right.
We also had a few other storylines enter, such as the new cook, new assistant cook, sorry, who joined the cast at the very end of the episode, which was kind of something fun to see, and maybe a little bit of a rival for Daisy. What did you guys think about that?
Oh, yeah. Whenever Daisy kind of put her in her place right off the bat there, didn't she?
I like when Daisy gets uppity.
And then, of course, we've got the Thomas, O'Brien, and Jimmy.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like this is going to get messy very quickly. I mean, O'Brien meant it last week when she said that he was gonna pay.
It's on.
Yeah, big time.
Well, the Dowager, you know, had some good moments, especially one in particular, and we're going to share with you now our favorite segment, one of our favorite segments, the Dowager on Display, and this one is a lovely moment between Lady Violet and, well, we say poor Edith, so let's take a look. The Dowager always gives us some great moments to smile about. And another reason to smile is we have a wonderful guest joining us now. We have Suzie Elder, Associate Professor of Costume Technology Design in Penn State School of Theater. She teaches, among other things, history of fashion at Penn State and is currently working on a production of Love's Labor Lost. She's been following Downton Abbey since season 1. Thanks so much for being here tonight, Suzie.
Thank you. It's a delight. Thanks for having me.
It is a delight to have you. And we've got so much to talk about, especially with Downton and the fashion that we see throughout all 3 seasons now. And we began with 1912, and now we're up to season 3 in 1920. How have the silhouettes changed? I mean, obviously we're seeing a lot in season 3 now, but what in particular?
Well, the waistlines go up and down, you know, during the period, and the fabrics are going to change quite a bit. And we find that during the war, certainly, the women repeat their wardrobe a little more often than they would have otherwise. But what's interesting is that there are certain aspects of their clothes that continue to flourish. We were talking earlier about how the hats, the accessories, and the millinery is not under the restrictions of rationing during the war. It's not needed for uniforms or anything of that sort. So,
and I think we're showing actually right now one of the pieces that you had brought, which is on the screen right there. This is a piece from that would be accessorized on a hat.
Exactly, and they were made so that they could be removed and put on a different hat as the styles changed and so forth. And yet, the plumes and the ribbons and all the elaborate decorations that you find on the millinery of the day kind of exploded because that was the way the women expressed their style during the time period when wool was being restricted because of use for uniforms and a variety of other materials as well.
When we see, you know, in Downton, is it true that, you know, even during wartime, you know, they might have dressed a little more plainly during the day, but still sometimes for an event in the evening or when they would entertain at night, would they still dress up a little bit more? Would they still bring out the finery?
Well, I think we see that. Of course, Carson is, you know, being the butler, it's important that everything be presented properly. And I think the entire household feels that way, not only the staff, but the people, you know, particularly the Dowager. We must maintain, you know, stiff British upper lip and so forth. And so we do see kind of more elaborate clothing in the evening, but it's part of their wardrobe. it's not like the war has started, we're going to throw this wardrobe away and get severe with our type of clothing. So you do see some influences from the time period. The colors are very much part of the Parisian fashion couture of the time. It's influenced by...
And there's one on screen, yeah.
Yes, yes, they are influenced by the great Parisian fashion houses of the day, as well as some of the art forms, the Russian ballet and so forth. So you're still going to see that elaborateness in the evenings, but daytime is a little more restricted, I would have to say.
So far we've been talking more about the upstairs crew. I'm curious about the downstairs and how these subtle differences in their costumes, like I think we have a picture of Thomas when he was a footman versus Thomas as a valet, and how their costumes really delineated the rank they had. And we talked a little bit about Daisy's dress, and I'm curious what we can tell. And we can see earlier footman Thomas on the screen, and then he makes his change. And to us, maybe they don't seem that different. He's in a suit and he's in another suit, but I know there is a meaning to that.
I think, you know, the costume design for the show is wonderful. It's marvelous, and above and beyond the beautiful tailoring or the gorgeous fabrics and so forth, you're looking at clothing that tells you a lot of things about the people. It helps with the characterization. I think that's why we feel so intimately acquainted with the people and care so much about them. And so it is, you know, we see Daisy's gets a new dress, and that's exciting, and people get their hair styled a little differently. We were talking about O'Brien being so severe
earlier,
in you know, her black dress and her prim little white collar, and then she has these silly little curls that when you see them in their night clothes, you know, she has her little bonnet on to protect those curls and so forth. And I think that's the interesting thing, not only downstairs but upstairs, and we see people in all different activities wearing all different types of clothing, and it's pretty intimate. I mean, you see people in night clothes, and you see them when they're happy and when they're sad, and that just adds to the characterization.
And we actually have a question for you from Twitter tonight. Well, first, though, I want to say we have some of our Twitter folks are saying that they love watching the fashion in this show. One particular tweeter says, when I was a little girl, I loved this style of clothes, and I always wanted some. And then we have another person that says the clothing is so beautiful, I was born in the wrong era and the wrong class.
I think many people, not only women, but men, you know, feel the same way when they look at a show like this.
But the question that we actually got from one of our Twitter followers is, how much would they have paid for some of the various styles of dress in that time? Some of these costumes are pretty elaborate, and they mentioned some designers. I'm thinking of Edith's wedding dress. I mean, they had to have been pretty costly, right?
Yes, and of course, you know, we're talking all natural fibers at this point in time, so you're talking probably silks, you know, and very expensive fabrics. Some would have been imported. Of course, we know British wool is, you know, the best in the world for the most part. That would have worked for the sporting clothing, but you know, the evening wear and so forth, it's hard to say. I would say, you know, you are talking what would be expensive to us. You know, a wedding gown ranges from, it can be $200 or it can be, you know, several $1,000s. And I'm certain that, you know, the Earl and his family really went to the upper range. So I would say for the day, it would have been pricey. But the thing is about the clothing of upper class people, it was classic, and so they continue to wear it, you know, for many different occasions. So.
Yeah, and you know, we saw them being repeated a little bit. Yeah,
so. It's hard to put a value on that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it probably would have been top of the line for sure.
So would you say that the costumes are historically accurate in the show?
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. And you know, some have come from costume storages and, you know, costume rental houses. Some are specifically made for the actors themselves. They were talking about how Lord Grantham's his suits and such were being tailored by the tailors on Savile Row, which is the premier tailoring, group in London. And so those would have been, by today's standards, even now very, very costly. But then other garments, they would have rented. So some were being constructed for that character in that particular scene. Others would have been coordinated from other collections of clothes, basically.
I think we can all agree we would love to be in that era to get to wear these beautiful clothes. But one thing I have to say, past all the elegance, it looks like it was a lot of work to get ready, especially for the ladies. I mean, how many hours are we talking about? You have to have people helping zip you and button you. So is it really as laborious as it seems?
Well, if you ever look at a lady's gown from this era, the fabric itself is very, very delicate. And the way that things close, they kind of snap across the waist and up one side and around the neck, and often in the back. So you do need help to get into these types of clothes.
Heavy sometimes too.
Yes.
Very
yes,
heavy.
Very, very heavy. And what I found very interesting, the fabrics are rather delicate for the women's evening wear. And there have been blogs about how the wardrobe staff on the film have to go in and repair because the ladies have put their heel through a hemline of a dress or something like that. But that's very typical of the servants. I'm happy to see the men, the valets, and the footmen. They know how to sew. They know how to repair their own clothing, the master's clothing, and so forth. So there was a lot of maintenance on the clothes from this time period of the upper class clothing.
I'm assuming the lower class were a little bit simpler to get on and off.
Yes, well, they didn't have anyone helping them dress. So, and if you notice, the maids' dresses button up the front so they can get into them and out of them easily. The ladies are the closures are kind of camouflaged and you don't quite know where they are. So
and you've actually also brought some great stuff from the collection, your own personal collection, and also the collection from the School of Theater.
Yes.
Yes. So tell us, we've got some stuff that we're showing here on the screen, but tell us about some of this stuff. There's the military uniform. We've got also a beautiful beaded gown and some also accessories that we're showing right there on the screen.
Well, the accessories, there's some interesting things. There's a pair of steel shoe buckles. Again, much of the accessorizing of the garments could be removed and put on another garment, as we were talking earlier. So these shoe buckles were quite elaborate and probably cost a good amount of money, but could be easily transferred from one pair of pumps to another. The same is true of this little millinery decoration that we see here. That the ladies themselves or the ladies' maids would have sat and sewn by hand. And again, those could have been taken off of one hat and put on another. I know, Whitney, you were interested in the silk stockings. You were hoping we would
particularly interested in the stockings just because of the purple band at the top.
Yes.
It looks pretty contemporary.
Well, fashion is cyclical. What comes around goes around. And what's interesting about this time period, we're almost on the brink of, a change in ladies' undergarments and a little raise of the hemline and so forth. But these silk stockings have that cotton top on them because they would have been gartered above the knee at this point in time. And they had to be a bit sturdier than the silk, which is the black that you see here, and yet they are still very opaque. We would never see anything sheer on a woman's leg. That would be very, very improper at this point in time. Let's see, there are a few compacts. Makeup is beginning to be acceptable, shall we say, in the upper classes. And some of the handbags here, ladies, of course, of fashion, wearing these very sheer and elegant clothes. They didn't have pockets in their clothes, so of course they carried an evening bag or a little handbag as well. the one closest to you, Whitney, is
that's this one.
It's an earlier style, slightly earlier style. So that would have been something that the Dowager might have carried. It's a little reminiscent of Victorian times, and
'Cause she was a little bit stuck in the past.
she was. And if you have, it's one thing to appreciate the clothing and the fabrics and so forth, but if you have a working knowledge of the fashions of the time, you really can begin to see a whole second layer of intention there, I suppose, in the clothing.
Well, Suzie, we want you to stick around because I'm sure we're going to have some calls who want to ask, some callers who want to ask you some questions about the fashions that we see on Downton Abbey. So if you're just joining us, this is After Abbey, the live post-Downton Abbey interactive talk show, and we invite your correspondence. You can call us at 1-800-543-8242. You can also email questions and comments to afterabby@wpsu.org. Tweet us at After Abbey, or send us a note on Facebook where you can cast your vote for your favorite Crawley sister bride. Our fan page is facebook.com/AfterAbbeyTV, and Jessica's monitoring those votes, and she's also checking for Facebook notes as well. She's also checking email. But let's go ahead and open the phone lines. We want to hear from you. Give us a call. Let us know if you have questions. Let us know if you want to vote for your favorite Crawley sister bride. Remember Lady Mary and Lady Edith. We've got those great photos of those Crawley sister brides that we'll share with you. But first, we've got many questions. I'm sure, Jessica, do you have any questions on Facebook?
Yeah, actually, we have some folks that have been emailing tonight. Somebody, Elizabeth says, I believe that we will find that Lady Sybil has played a more radical role in Ireland than we might have expected from a Crawley. So I think that's true. I mean, she's proven that she's kind of definitely the rebellious one of the three sisters. So I think that'll prove true. As far as our poll is concerned, right now, Lady Edith's dress is in the...
and there we see it right there. It looks like Edith is winning the
Edith
poll.
is winning.
I just want to say I didn't get on Facebook to cast my vote, but I'm one in favor of Lady Mary.
There you go.
Like the lace.
I voted for Lady Mary as
lace,
well.
We are a split crew up here because I enjoyed Lady Edith's. What about
And
you?
Suzie, what would you?
I liked Edith's best. I really did. They're different styles, and the fabrics are different. They're very suited to the figures of the women who are wearing them, and I guess it just comes down to personal preference.
And what would you say of the time period? Whose gown was most reminiscent of that time period? Because they're both pretty different. As far as Mary's was more of a drop waist, and Edith's was more, I felt it was more kind of like 30s or 40s Hollywood siren glamour.
It was a little, certainly more form-fitting.
Yeah.
And Mary's actually has perhaps a more traditional silhouette, a more historic silhouette to the look of it. But Edith's really just kind of showed off her figure, and the fabric itself was very luxurious and...
But they would have used that fabric at that time?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
They're both beautiful.
They are.
You know,
They are.
It's hard to pick a favorite.
They are.
But let us know if you have questions at 1-800-543-8242. We want to hear what you feel, how you feel about tonight's episode and all about season 3 as well, because there is much more to come on Downton Abbey this season, and we look forward to your phone calls. Right now, what does everyone think about tonight's episode? Suzie, what did you think about tonight's episode?
Well, there's a lot coming down the road. There really is. And I think the characters kind of give us a little innuendo about what is coming. I think just historically, we are moving from the mature Lord's world to a much younger world. Both Mary and Matthew, they're going to take the reins. I think that's what's going to happen, at least in that particular scenario. But they all talk about the winds of change, and I think they're all going to be feeling that shortly.
And Lindsay?
Well, I just got distracted thinking about Mary and Matthew taking the reins, because we had talked about this earlier, going back to the fashion and the costumes. Whitney, actually, when we were talking earlier, brought up the difference you see in Lady Mary when she comes back from her honeymoon, and she's somewhat less adorned and a little simpler. And we were talking about, is that something that would have happened once a woman got married?
The status, yeah, is reflected in her clothing, certainly, and we see that, you know, as part of her young matron lifestyle, if you will. And the styles in general are getting simpler anyway because of the post-war and whatnot. But yes, she's getting a little more austere, I would say, is a good way to describe the silhouette.
Let's let Linda from Johnstown weigh in. Linda, how are you tonight? Do you have a question or comment for the show?
Yes, I do. I love your discussion on the clothing.
Oh, great.
And I'm particularly, my favorite one was Lady Mary's dress that we had. But I did have a comment, or it's a question in my mind. I can't remember the doctor's name. And when Mrs. Hughes went to speak with them, to Lady Cora about she had heard that she was ill. She said, had she talked to Dr. Carson?
Clarkson. Yeah.
Clarkson
is his name.
Did you say Clarkson or Carson?
Clarkson.
That's his name, but I could have sworn she said Carson, and I thought, did they actually make a blooper and not get it?
It was just a close name call there, but it was Dr. Clarkson, yes. Yes.
All right. That was my comment. I thought, oh, how could they do that?
Sometimes it is a show that you have to watch a few times to pick up those little subtleties. But
I think that's a testament to how devoted the Downton devotees are, that you're able to pick up on those subtle little things. We're so into it.
That's right.
Well, I appreciate your show, and I'm adoring this After Abbey concept that you have. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for calling tonight, Linda. You have a good night. We've also got a call from Carol from Williamsport. Hi, Carol.
Hi, I'm really enjoying the show and very, very interested in the fashion, on the show and what you've been, showcasing this evening. I wanted to let you know that my aunt, who was a collector of books in the 1800s to the early 1900s, I wonder if your guest has heard of Godey's Ladies Book and Magazine.
Oh, indeed.
In other words, this lady was the Martha Stewart of her time. And the book that I have showcases many of the items that you have on, and especially the bustles, the, very elaborate capes, underclothing, and it gives very interesting detail about cross-stitch, embroidery, and, a lot of the accessories of the time. In fact, there are hand-painted fold-out pictures that I have with tissue paper in this book, and it's quite elaborate, and I understand this book is actually quite valuable. This is one of a large collection my aunt had, and when she passed, her daughter gave me this book for, remembrance. So that's all I wanted to say, and keep up the great work. I love this show, and I can't wait to see the next segment of Downton Abbey.
Oh, well, thank you so much for calling tonight, Carol. You have a good night. Well, so much has happened. I mean, I'm sure there are more great fashions to come as we move forward into the 20s.
Yes. And it'll be interesting to see, the 20s becomes a very liberating time for the young people of society. So it'll be interesting to see whether that real conservative, upper crust British attitude is maintained with the younger people, or whether they're going to kind of break loose a little bit.
And especially with Edith now being, in print.
Lady of the paper,
printed word.
Well,
maybe she'll start with a little more daring fashion looks.
Well, and the suffragette movement is in full swing now. So there are lots of different avenues that the designers can go through with the fashions, whether it's a suffragette look or the Roaring 20s, and those Americans. remember in one of the episodes, Lord Grantham says to Cora, he says, "Don't be getting American on me now," because, you know, it's a whole different attitude.
Well, Sybil pushed a few boundaries already. If we go back to, I forget which season, where she wore the pants into the dining room.
Yes, the harem pants, yes.
She never wore them again, though. I don't know if they didn't go over too well with the Dowager, I'm guessing.
They weren't as popular, perhaps, as people thought they were. They were kind of a, you know, a flash in the pan kind of fashion style that kind of came and went. But, you know, I think it was certainly there for a character statement.
We have one quick call that we're going to take Oh, I'm sorry, we lost that call. I was going to take that really quick.
Well, we actually have an email that we could get to quickly, and it was about the very tailored, tiered, woolen-looking dress that Mary wore in the main salon when she was talking to Matthew, and he was talking about the day nursery. It was a very chic and new shape for her, wasn't it?
Yes, it certainly was, very definitely. And I think you know, as the decade turns, that's what you're going to see more of on the show.
And you know what we haven't talked about? We didn't talk about the toaster, did we? I've been kind of on the social media thing here, but I loved that. I thought that was great.
Well, that, you know, on your final thoughts, is that something that you would call as one of your favorite things that you saw today? We have a couple minutes left, so tell us.
It really was. I mean, a toaster. But, you know, I guess it would have been a very big deal. But, you know, I pop in my Eggos in the morning and I don't really think twice. But Mrs. Hughes.
It's her undivided attention.
Yeah.
She sits there and she's watching that toast cook and...
Pretty
poor
great.
Carson.
Yeah.
Oh, and you think about all the modern conveniences that have come in this, you know, the Dowager was very skeptical of the electricity, you know, wouldn't have it in the bedrooms, that sort of thing.
The fumes.
Yes, the telephone is introduced into the manor house.
Weren't they curling hair at one point?
Yes, yes, the curling iron. Of course, you have electricity, so you can begin to use all of those new and revolutionary and time-saving appliances.
Well, we've had quite a bit of action on Twitter, too, that I want to make sure we get to a little bit of it. You know, people are rooting for Edith. Edith is the real deal. I think she's going to be the most successful. Please go to America, Edith. I think she'd have a lot of fun with her grandma over in America. I think that'd be a fun little spin-off series if Julian Fellows is listening.
That's a great idea. Last week we had some fantastic ideas about Patrick from our viewers. So it's really nice to see that people are chiming in with storyline ideas.
Yes. She'll go to Canada.
Yeah, oh, I don't think that's a good idea for the Crawley family.
The Crawleys never come back.
Yeah.
And Lindsay, what did you find this week?
Oh, I think the Bates's reaction when he found out that Anna hadn't given up to him, and the guy says, "Why are you relieved?" He goes, "She's she's still there for me," and they're just so sweet and so cute. And anything with Bates and Anna is found to be a hit.
And Susie, what about you? This week for your favorite part of the show.
I'd have to agree with you, Jessica. The toaster was pretty swell. Yeah. It was very endearing, actually. You know, that she would, and as an older woman, would embrace such a new appliance. Yeah.
Well, it's been another week for us here, and I want to thank our special guest, Suzie Elder, Associate Professor of Costume, Technology Design in Penn State School of Theater, for being with us tonight. We hope you'll watch next week after episode 4 of Downton Abbey as we continue to see how the story unfolds around the Crawley family. We want you to continue this conversation. Visit our website, WPSU.org/AfterAbbey, and on Facebook.com/AfterAbbeyTV. Until we meet again, I'm Whitney Sheridan with my co-hosts, Jessica Peters and Lindsay Whistle. Cheers, and thanks for joining us.